Pittsburgh Steelers fans, thanks for joining us for another BTSC podcast. Wednesday night's podcast is Know Your Enemy. And today I'm filling in for Geoffrey Benedict, and we have our regular Shannon White. What's up, Shannon?
Hey guys, yeah, sounds like GB. He's under the weather, so I hate that and hope he gets feeling well soon. But we're gonna have a good time talking about the Browns and the Steelers game and the rivalry, and we might even trade a little trash talk. You never know.
Right. And with that trash talk exchange, we have from the dog. I'm sorry, Noah, tell me again.
Dawg Check.
Dawg Check, the Dawg Check podcast. Noah Schaeffer, who co-hosts that podcast with Eric Metcalf. Some of you older fans, Steeler fans like Shannon and myself, will remember Eric Metcalf. Noah knows the guy personally, but don't remember him playing. That's how how distant we are from those. But he knows his Cleveland Browns, so that's what we're going to talk about today. So Noah, tell us a little bit about yourself, about your podcast, and just things like that, man.
Yeah, so I'm Noah Schaeffer. I run an Instagram page called Brown Central. I started that, maybe 4 years ago, and just last year I got an email, and they were like, "Would you like to join the Dawg Check podcast? We have an opening." I was like, "Let's do it." So me and Eric Metcalf have been, chopping it up for about 6 months, 8 months. We run down every game, off season, all that, and I'm excited to branch out and do these type of podcasts with you guys, and I've had opportunities to do them with other people in the past, so this should be fun.
Oh wow, we appreciate you joining us. So where can we find you? When are you guys on and stuff?
So we are on every single podcast platform, Spotify, Apple Music, the podcast app, wherever you get your podcast, you can find us there. We'd appreciate the follow. Maybe a 5-star, I'd appreciate that too. But, come over and listen if you want to, hear what's going on with the Cleveland Browns. There's a lot to talk about.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I've said many times on our podcast, I have some really close friends that are Browns fans. And it's funny, a lot of them are transplants, where their family's from the area. And then, they've moved, say, into there. I'm in West Virginia, so a lot of them are in the area. What is your background? How did you become a Browns fan? Is this a family? Are you from the area? What is your story that way?
So my mom is from the Cleveland area, up near Ashtabula. So that's kind of on that, Pennsylvania border. And she met my dad. They moved up to Cleveland. They got season tickets, an apartment close to the stadium and all that. So when I came along, I was born into it. And unfortunately, I had to go through all those tough times, but, I've stuck with it, and I really enjoy covering them through the good times and the bad.
Hey, I get it, man. I'm originally from Youngstown, Ohio. And if you know the geographics of Northeast Ohio, Youngstown is literally right in the middle of Pittsburgh and Cleveland.
Yep.
And so I have a lot of family that are Browns fans, cousins, uncles. But for whatever reason, and I'm a 70s baby, way back in the 70s, my dad was a Steelers fan. So I grew up as a Steeler, and probably 75% of my family are Browns fans. So, we get real riled up within the family, text exchanges and stuff like that, group messages about this rivalry every year.
Oh, for sure.
And I've been used to dominating it through Roethlisberger time there, but now, man, you guys won this year. We have to see how it goes.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we can close out the season for sure.
So let's get into talking about, what do you guys want to talk about first? We'll talk about this game in particular, or talk about your season and our season for a little bit, then get into the game and what it means for both of us.
I'm down to break down our season, and we'll get into it there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't you go ahead? I mean, okay, I have a question. So far as capital goes and return on investment, do you think Deshaun Watson has been worth the money, the 5 games he's played, or is it 4 games?
5.
Okay. And so, you probably think it's just Russ. You think he'll come along? Like, just tell us your thoughts about the team and Deshaun Watson and all that stuff.
Yeah, so I think we all kind of knew this was going to be an adjustment. The offensive line is kind of they're not used to having to block for a guy who can scramble and use his legs like Deshaun Watson can. So that was obviously going to be the first thing that we're going to have to hurdle over. The wide receivers are used to having somebody who, can kind of drop in that ball from a high angle, and Deshaun Watson kind of has more of a straight zip on it. So that's also something that we've seen in the Texans game and a little bit in Cincinnati, where the wide receivers are going to have to adjust. But as far as his play goes, I mean, he's still kind of getting back into it. Stefanski is trying to figure out how he can use him and get the maximum amount of talent that he can get out of Watson and do the most that they can for this offense. I think the game against Cincinnati was his best game so far. He had, over 200 yards, the only time so far that he's had over 200 yards. And he looked pretty sharp in the fourth quarter, especially. He had a really nice drive and unfortunately couldn't get it done. But for right now, things are looking very promising. I think that we can do a lot going forward. And I obviously wouldn't say it was worth it yet, but the potential is there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a huge Nick Chubb's fan. To me, he's the best running back in the NFL. I'm old school. I'm an old timer. I love the power runners. The guy with, he's got such incredible contact balance. He's got great acceleration. He's got everything you want for a running back. And they have such a powerful offensive line. I thought they was going to be able to, I'm kind of shocked at where they're at, record-wise this year, because I thought that they would be more consistent because you can lean on that running game and, play action and conservative passing game, and then have the defense behind it. Kind of like the formula the Steelers have been using in the second half of the season. I think that was the plan, to Watson come along. What went wrong with that plan? What didn't work out? Was it the defensive side of the ball, or what do you think that the shortcoming was, the reason they're not in the playoffs?
I think the first 6 weeks of the season-ish, you can kind of blame that on the defense. You obviously had the game against the Jets. I mean, you cannot lose that game.
Mm-hmm.
You're up by a big margin, and with a minute 36, you have a wide open touchdown to Corey Davis. That was a absolutely blown coverage. Then you have an onside kick that was recovered by the Jets. Can't have that happen. And the special teams unit has been off all year, and they're starting to find their rhythm. But the games in the beginning of the season is what sets the tone. So when your defense can't make the tackles, they're still getting confused in the secondary, which was an issue that we had when John Johnson first came along, and these issues can't get figured out. That's where your issues come. And the offense, I think for the past, 4 weeks, they've been trying to figure things out, and they didn't rely on the run game as much. They're trying to get Watson back into the fold of things, and that's where it kind of comes apart. Again, the wide receivers, the offensive line are learning Deshaun Watson. So it's just really inconsistent at the moment. And towards the back half of the season, like the Cleveland Browns defense does, they tend to pick it up. And with all the injuries that we've had at linebacker and the inconsistencies at defensive tackle and Myles Garrett getting in that car accident, there's just a lot that has been going on. So you can blame it on a bunch of things, but hopefully we can get it figured out next year.
Yeah. I'll just go piggyback to what you said a second ago. You said Watson's game in Cincinnati was his best game so far of the year. And I would be inclined to agree with you. I mean, statistically, from a throwing touchdown perspective, this past week against the Commanders was his best game. But and so he had three touchdowns, and you guys won convincingly, I think by two tubs. But he was 9 of 18, 50% completion percentage, and the two passes were to two of the touchdowns were to Amari Cooper. And as far as offense goes, that's what I think you guys are missing is that explosive player. Amari Cooper's a great route running precision receiver, but you missed that threat of Odell Beckham, that guy, you know what I mean, who could take the top off the defense, who you have to roll coverage to, and open up things for everything else. I think Amari Cooper is a Pro Bowl type receiver, but Odell Beckham was different. So I personally thought you guys were more we feared you more when Beckham was the guy. When he was just out in the field, he didn't have a good chemistry with Baker Mayfield. I think he could have possibly had a great chemistry with Deshaun Watson. But I mean, so I think you guys, this is just for me watching. I think you guys best personnel is 12 personnel. When you got Njoku and Harrison Bryant out there on the field,
yep.
And you kind of playing smash mouth football, because that line is great. Nick Chubb, like Shannon said, is probably top 2 or 3 back in the league, if not number 1. I mean, I know Josh Jacobs is leading in rushing this year, but still, Nick Chubb is that guy. Yeah. And defensively, again, my perspective, how I've seen it your season, like you guys had a lot of injuries, like to the linebackers. A lot of linebackers hurt, and I know Jadeveon Clowney was out for a while. He's not such a big threat in the pass rush game, but he's great against the run. So, I mean, you guys been dealing with a lot of injuries. You had Watson out for the first 11 games.
Yeah.
And so, so now you're just kind of trying to find your mojo and get some continuity going amongst that offense and people coming back from injury and stuff. But it's a shame that it's week 18 already.
Yeah, 100%. It's just definitely thought that we would come out swinging, and I don't know. As the Cleveland Browns fans like to say, there's always next year. So we're just going to have to keep looking forward to that. And I definitely think there was promise this year, but again, everything is going to come together next year.
Right. Okay. Well, yeah, the division doesn't get any easier next year. I mean, and we talk about that all the time, because I host a show on the audio side called We Run the North, and we have guests from all the division teams. We have probably the toughest division in the league, along with the NFC East this year. But so, yeah, we'll see how next year plays out. Now, Shannon, go ahead and let's get into this week's game, man. Go ahead and take it over.
Yeah, I think that everybody expected the other division rivals in the AFC North were thinking, well, Ben's retiring, and Steelers are going to be down for a while, and this is their time to make hay. But it looks like the Steelers might have hit on not saying the franchise quarterback, but as I've said before, if you can build a strong roster without any glaring weaknesses, you look at the Philadelphia Eagles and the San Francisco 49ers, those are the 2 most complete rosters in the NFL right now. You got the Niners are winning with Mr. Irrelevant, last week of the draft, Brock Purdy. And, just because he's protecting the ball, he's doing a little bit like Big Ben did back in the day. They've got such a strong roster, they're continuing to win with him. And then Jalen Hurts is progressing and getting better and better. And they've just got such a, strong roster. If you have a quarterback who's above average, but he's clutch, he's got that it factor, you can win a championship with that. We've talked recently, the Niners got there with Jimmy Garoppolo, and he had a chance in that Super Bowl to win that game. And, the win was on his arm and he missed the throw. So you never know till the guy gets there if he has that type of clutch and the it factor to get you over the top. But Pickett's showing signs. Has the Browns, if you're hearing any talk about Pickett, or who are they talking about this week, and who are they most preparing to shut down? I would assume it's the running game, because of, Harrison Warren had such a big game against the Ravens, which never happens. So the Steelers running game is really coming around. What talk have you been hearing coming out of the camp?
Yeah, I mean, Kenny Pickett is electric. So you are going to have to do everything that you can to stop Kenny Pickett, and he can roll out. He can do it all. But I think the biggest thing is the Steelers have like a lot of guys who are low key, but they can produce. Like, I think Deontay Johnson hasn't necessarily had the year that people expected, but he's still fantastic. And George Pickens had a phenomenal catch against us earlier in the year, and that is kind of putting everybody on notice. And like you said, TJ Warren, he's a great pass catcher, and Najee Harris can kind of do it all if he's on. Benny Snell, I didn't expect him to do much, but he's gotten in there too. So there is just a lot of guys on this team, and Pat Freiermuth, who we are going to have to be aware of. And with our defense kind of playing how it is, it may be a challenge for them.
No, I completely agree. Pittsburgh has quite a few good players at the skill position. I think our offensive line is, and then they've been playing good for the past since after the bye. I mean, but if you want to talk about the biggest need on our team, I'd say it's probably the O line.
Yeah, our defensive line has kind of been wonky. Myles Garrett is definitely the one who's carrying.
Hey man, what's going on with Myles Garrett? I hear a lot of noise and chatter up there about him. I don't know exactly what. That's why I'm asking you. Like, is there anything going on with him?
Are you referring to him sitting out for the first series?
Maybe that's probably what it is. Yeah.
So Myles Garrett was dealing with a illness about a week ago, and apparently he didn't communicate it properly to the team. So when the injury reports came out, he didn't have an injury designation, and you can't really do that if you're injured or you're sick, whatever. The team has to know about it. So he didn't tell the team. They fined him. They sat him out for the first series. I don't really think it's much to look at, but Stefanski has had a track record of doing that this season. He sat out Perion Winfrey for some disciplinary issues that never really got explained, and I don't know. I don't think
that's your rookie D lineman, right? Perion Winfrey.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So everything seems to be fine. Myles Garrett said it was just a miscommunication. He has to be better, and he thinks the team, kind of misconstrued it a little bit, but everything seems okay right now.
Okay. Well, I'm anticipating this matchup to be like you guys have kind of already foreshadowed, to be a slugfest. Mm-hmm. Like you guys want to run the ball with Nick Chubb, you know what I mean, and Kareem Hunt, and we want to come in and run the ball with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. And I know last time Deshaun Watson was in Pittsburgh, I believe it was 2020 with the Houston Texans. He threw for 2 touchdowns and also 2 interceptions. I think he was sacked maybe 4 times. And they ended up losing that game, but it was a competitive game. And I think you guys have I know you guys have a better roster than Houston had in 2020 and now even. So I mean, I'm expecting a really, really good game. Yeah, I don't know, competitive game. I don't know. But what do you think, Shannon?
Well, just to drop back for just a second, what we was talking about earlier, the offensive line Sunday against the Ravens was the first time that Najee Harris has ever run behind an above average offensive line performance. The Steelers last year, I don't know how closely you follow the Steelers, but they had the worst offensive line in the NFL. The only reason they were even functional offensively was because Ben was getting rid of the ball in 1.5 seconds. Everybody knew it. The fact that he was still able to get him to the playoffs was a miracle. That was one of his greatest performances at his age, with that amount of talent around him, lack of talent. It was all him and TJ Watt and, Defensive Player of the Year performance. This year's team is much more talented. Now, they're very young. And, there's the warts that come with being that young. But the offensive line, with the new guys they brought in, James Daniels and Mason Cole, to add to the other young guys they had, are starting to gel. And they've had the good fortune of being healthy to where they've pretty much played all the snaps this year. So they're starting to reap the benefits of that. My concern is the Steelers defense has got some age in places that they really need to rebuild that defensive line. Because Ogunjobi might be gone. He's a free agent. Hayward's not getting younger. Alulu's finished. So they really need to focus on that defensive line. But one of the things people are overlooking, they need a cornerback one. They need a CB1 desperately. When they play a team that has an elite pass catcher and a quarterback to go with him, they've struggled. Now, they did shut down Adams for Devontae Adams for the Raiders, but they run, roll coverage to him, and they really focused on shutting him up. And then Carr, made some bad passes and threw some interceptions. But when they played Cleveland the first time, Cleveland had a lot of success with Brissett throwing to Cooper. And Cooper is the type of receiver who can get open instantly against our coverage. And so I think they really need to focus. Again, if Cleveland beats them with the second or third best receiver, that's fine. But they really need to focus on taking Cooper away. I think it'll be a little bit easier than it was last time, honestly, because of the way Watson throws the ball. As you said, he doesn't have that touch to get to that soft level of the field, over the first layer of coverage and in front of the deep coverage. He struggles with that some. The passes he hit against the Commanders to Cooper were where he could just drill it in there and Cooper would catch it and then, yards after the catch, make somebody miss, take it to the house. So, how are you seeing Watson-Cooper connection? How's that relationship developing?
Yeah, I think that it could be, a top 5 wide receiver quarterback duo going into next year. This year, they had some miscommunication issues in the first 2 games. Again, it's just getting used to a new ball thrower. But Cooper is able to adjust very quickly. I mean, he's a veteran. He's been on 2 teams already. This is his 3rd. And I think he's really kind of settling down and doing everything that he can to ensure that Deshaun Watson is his best self. Against the Commanders, I will admit, Cooper's 2 touchdowns, it was kind of busted coverage from the Commanders. It wasn't necessarily anything that Cooper did. But Watson was able to have the vision to see him open on the sideline. And as you said, he kind of struggles with finding that soft area in the coverage. So it was kind of nice to see him just kind of drop it in there and Cooper doing the rest. And I will say again, if he didn't have those 2 throws, his stats wouldn't have been that fantastic in that game. Threw the ball 18 times. Mm-hmm. And I believe he was like 3 for 10 at some point. Not very good numbers. So Amari Cooper is going to be a big factor in how Deshaun Watson develops in Cleveland. And right now they are doing a fantastic job.
So going back to your defense, like, how do you feel about you guys secondary? I know Denzel Ward just had a great game this past weekend. He's starting to come along. I always like Delpit coming to LSU. And you drafted the kid out of Northwestern year before?
Yep.
And I like the guy from, is it Mississippi State? Was it Emerson?
Yep.
I like him too. Good. Yeah. And he was like a 4th or 5th round pick. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about your secondary? How do you as a fan like Cleveland secondary?
We definitely have a lot of guys that are able to get in there and be scrappy. And I think one of the biggest things is, like, I haven't necessarily seen a cornerback room that has the fluidity that our corners do in their hips and their movement and all that. They're very sticky. So Denzel Ward definitely hasn't had the season that we were expecting. A lot of people were calling for him to be traded after getting $100 million contract. Simply not happening. But he's turned it up. Martin Emerson has a tendency to be a little handsy, so I'm going to be interested to see that George Pickens, Martin Emerson matchup if it happens. They're both guys that they talk a lot, and be interested to see what happens. So Greg Newsome, he's been pretty good. Again, not necessarily the year that we were expecting, but he hasn't done anything egregious. And Grant Delpit is coming off of the best game of his career, 92.3 PFF grade, I believe. He had 2 interceptions. He was plugging in all the run fits and all that. So this secondary has turned it up from the first half of the season. I'm excited to see what they can do going forward. And in this game against the Steelers, I think it is going to be crucial that they are sticky, they are physical, and they get in there and just try to frustrate the receivers a little bit and, be smart.
There's two young cornerbacks in the AFC that has really impressed me this year. Emerson's one of them, and the
Sauce
rookie.
Gardner.
Well, yeah, but we knew he was going to be great.
Oh, okay.
we knew he was going to be great. I'm talking about Mathis for the Denver Broncos.
Yeah,
And he's from Pitt. He played for the Panthers, and I knew he was very athletic, had excellent speed. But the thing that Emerson and him both have, now Mathis is shorter. Emerson's got good length too, but they are ultra competitive, and they hound that whoever they're covering the whole time. They jam them at the line. They just hound them. They're perfect for the modern day NFL. As you said, a little handsy, get a few penalties here and there, but you trade that off for that aggressive coverage. See, the Steelers do not have that. They don't have anybody with the speed to do that style and stick with the guy. All the Steelers cornerbacks are limited in that straight, tight man-to-man coverage all over the field. And Emerson and Matthews, neither one was a first-round draft pick. That shows that if you got the right scouting department, and then you got the right guys to develop them when you get them in house, because both of them had their weaknesses that dropped them down in the draft a little bit. But both of them guys showed that determination, and they got that dog in them. And Emerson, he is so competitive. So I expect that to be a great matchup, because I think that's who they'll have on Pickens. Because Ward will be on Johnson. And I'm really looking forward to that, because he's got the length and athleticism to match up with Pickens. And both of them are fiery personalities. So I think that could be a really good matchup. Besides Cooper, which I think the Steelers are going to try to roll coverage to, the tight ends. I can't say his name.
Njoku.
Yeah. He is could be a real problem. He was a problem last game. Now, the Steelers have had good luck in results when they put Terrell Edmonds on the best tight end in coverage for the other team. He's had extra responsibilities this year. And, like Mark Andrews, he really put a hurting on whoever the Steelers had on him, including Edmonds last Sunday night. But he's one of the top tight ends around. But I'm anxious to see because he's had really kind of a breakout season for the Browns this year, hasn't he?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, he just got paid too. He was franchise tag coming to the season.
Yep. Yeah, there was before he got that extension, he requested a trade, and we weren't going to do that because we knew the talent that he had. I mean, there aren't necessarily a lot of tight ends that are getting picked in the first round in any draft, and we took a chance on him, and it paid out. So he's definitely been special this year. I think there is kind of a lack of a connection with Watson and Njoku right now, but that will obviously get fixed. And when it does get fixed, it's going to be scary. So in this game, I think it is going to be crucial that they do find their connection and they just kind of find any weak spots that they can in that Steelers defense to get some big plays.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking like we need to take a pause for a break real quick, pay some bills, and we're not going anywhere. If you're watching on YouTube, stay with us, and we'll be back in 10 seconds. And thank you for coming back to Know Your Enemy podcast. We have our guest Noah Schaeffer from the Dawg
Check.
Dawg Check.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man. I should have wrote this down. I'm so sorry.
You're good.
But yeah, so we have Noah Schaeffer. We've been talking about the Browns season. We're talking about this matchup this weekend from both teams' perspectives. And now, Shannon, go ahead, man. How do you want to carry the rest of the episode, man?
Well, I wanted to ask Noah. Now you're I'm gonna say you're a young man, I know, but a lifelong Browns fan. Have you ever threw a dog biscuit at opposing team?
I'm not that lethal, but I know people who would. I definitely know people who would.
Oh, there's been dog biscuits. There's been dog bones.
Yep.
Batteries.
There's been batteries. Yes. But here's the thing. Like I said, I have some dear friends that are lifelong Browns fans. I have the utmost respect for all of you guys because, the Steelers before my time, they were the laughingstock of the NFL. They were the worst team, out there. And so the 70s was like their, revival. Thank the Lord they had the success they've had since then. I've often sat around and people will talk about the Browns fans. The Steeler fan base, you have fair weather fans in any fan base. But the Browns there's not been much fair weather even. So, I respect that. I respect loyalty. That's one of the things that I think is the most important that makes being a fan special. So I really, we joke and we pick and it's a rivalry as far as, the division opponent and everything like that. And everybody talks about the Brown stains or whatever. We all do that. And it's fun. It's in good fun. But I want to say I do have respect for the Browns fans because, it's one thing if you've won 6 Super Bowls. It's another if you've never won one. And, not all fandom's created equal. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I was just saying, I can piggyback off what you're saying because, like I said about my family, I have cousins, and they're in their early to late 40s, a lot of them, and so some of them are old enough to go back to the Bernie Kosar Browns, but outside of that, once we came out of like 87, 88. It was tough sledding outside of maybe 1 or 2 years that Belichick had. I'm guessing Noah, the only playoff win he's probably ever seen was the one in 2020 against Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I mean, it's crazy when you put it in context like that. I mean, and you guys are true blue loyal fans because, one of my cousins, let's talk about. He calls me every summer from Berea, Ohio, to talk about how good this rookie is. He's at the training camp watching and stuff, and he's just he probably had a few too many beers and talk about, oh man, we're gonna whoop you guys this year. We're gonna whoop you guys, and this was every year through the Ben Roethlisberger years. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it really never panned out. But you guys are definitely true blue loyal fans.
Yeah, we appreciate that. It has not been easy. I think. It definitely takes a toll on our mental health going into some of these games. And you can find that on Brown's Twitter. I mean, my goodness, after a bad loss, we're like ready to give up. We're throwing our hands up in the air. We're blaming whoever we can. But we're excited that we have a team that we can finally cheer for and have some promise.
You do. You guys do.
What do you think about, I know different people were not happy with the Deshaun Watson signing. When you have a franchise with the reputation, such a little fan base, but a reputation of losing, and you got to do something drastic at some point to change the narrative. And I believe that the Browns seen an opportunity, and the Haslam said, okay, we got to do something. And so they went ahead and pulled the trigger. Some people I knew was not happy with that at all, but I'm not hearing as much, murmuring about it. And now they're looking more finishing out this year and building towards the future. If you could, what is your opinion based on what you've seen this year? What do you think the next step that they need to take in this, building towards a championship? They feel like they got their quarterback now. Well, you know how great their running game is and all that. But what would you say would be the next number one priority to build a championship in Cleveland?
Well, I first kind of want to touch on the kind of how we Browns fans feel about Deshaun Watson and all the luggage that he's brought over. When you heard the talks about the Cleveland being in the mix and the Haslams doing everything they can to meet with Watson. I think everybody was kind of like, let's do it. Why not? And then the allegations start to come out, and then that's where it falls apart. The initial reaction when he was traded here was, oh, this isn't good. We can't, we're not going to be able to win like this. We're going to have a bad era, bad mantra and all that stuff, whatever. And when Watson does bad, I was at the Ravens game where we didn't put up a lot of points and we had some red zone failures. People are like, we spent $230 million on this guy. This is stupid. Why would we have a coach who can't even coach up a dual threat quarterback, all this stuff? There might be regret, but when we make the adjustments that we need to in the offseason to go into next year, I think they will change their minds, because the only thing that Cleveland wants is a championship. And this roster can definitely do it. I think right now we need to get a wide receiver too. I love Donovan Peoples-Jones. He is fantastic. He has the catch radius, the agility, everything, but he does not have the separation. So we need somebody who can separate. Brandon Cooks, I mean, he's had some turmoil in Houston. Obviously played with Watson. They were fantastic. Bring him in. Jalen Hyatt is somebody that I'm high on in the draft. Browns owner Jimmy Haslam loves the Tennessee type offense. He's a Tennessee alum. I think that would be somebody who they would be willing to trade up for if he's kind of in that low 30 area. He has fantastic speed. He is so fun to watch. It is exhilarating to see him play. So you get a wide receiver too. I think you're really set. Defense, you got to get a defensive tackle. There are so many defensive tackles in this free agency class. You got to go out and get one. De'Aaron Payne, Javon Hargrave. There's so many people that you can get. You need to make a splash. I don't really care how much money it costs. Go get somebody. And I think one more young linebacker doesn't hurt. I mean, we've had some injuries. Jacob Phillips has really not been what we were expecting. I was kind of questioning the pick when we made it, but he just has not panned out. And Anthony Walker has had some injuries, and Deion Jones is playing with a bum shoulder that he had surgery on, and he's starting to get back to his old ways, but there is a question long-term, and we would have to create a new contract for him, just kind of based on how his old one was structured. So those are really the only areas that I think we need to make adjustments on. I think edge, we could find another edge, but doesn't need to be anybody spectacular, just a young guy that we can plug in there and he can, go out and pressure the quarterback and let Miles eat, and let our new defensive tackle eat. So this team is really, really close to being special. They just need to be big spenders and go all in this offseason.
We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I didn't want to be coughing in the
yes,
mic.
I can't hear you.
But no, I was asking you, do you think Stefanski is the guy to take you there?
See, that's the other thing. I
was going to ask that too.
Yeah. Personally, I really think you have to give him another year. But you need to bring in another offensive specialist that has a voice and can, speak up and get these guys where they need to be. There doesn't seem to be a lot of accountability on this coaching staff. I think Stefanski is kind of a buddy type coach, and sometimes it takes some tough love, and there doesn't seem to be some tough love. So I'd like to get somebody else in there who is creative with the route trees and getting guys open and really playing to these players' strengths, because Stefanski is smart. He is one of the more efficient coaches in the NFL. And I mean, you look and see what he did with Baker Mayfield, and that was spectacular. I thought Baker Mayfield was going to sign a 5-year, $200 million extension. He could have been that good with us pre-injury, but he definitely has the capabilities to turn this offense up. So you have to give him another year. And if he can't execute in this next year, then I think he's done.
Yeah, you watch it's funny. You talked about any fan, and and it's funny how everybody's like, the offensive coordinator, They need another offensive voice. They need, the Steelers are in that same boat, obviously. And a lot of times when the talent is executing, you don't hear much about the offensive coordinator. It's when they're not, that you do. I'm kind of wondering how much of you said they need another offensive voice. And from what I've watched, and I do try to keep up with teams in the division, especially, I'm not obviously going to be as knowledgeable about the Browns as yourself, but it seems like that a lot of their issues, like the one game against the Steelers, they threw the ball a lot in the first half, and the Steelers was hanging with them. And I was like, I mean, they're doing the Steelers a favor because if they lean on that offensive line and lean on Chubbs and Hunt, I don't know if the Steelers can stop them. And in the second half, we've seen that. They started to really lean on that, and they controlled the game in the second half. I don't know if that's an offensive coordinator issue, if that's the head coach issue, or a combination of both. But now they definitely need to adjust, as you said, because of Watson's dual threat ability, and to build that offense around him and his skill set, because he had success play action and stuff like that with Houston. But I have not seen much of that, but I haven't watched him real close. Has he been utilizing any play action? Which really, when you got a dominant running game like they have, you think that they would have had some of that in there. I know Brissett ran some, but has Watson been running any since he's been in?
I think, they have started to open him up a little bit. In the Commanders game, I think he only had like 36 rushing yards, but they were designed plays and not just kind of scrambling stuff. So, yeah, you definitely need to utilize him a lot more. And maybe that's just they're saving it for next year. Again, a lot of this stuff that we are doing is going to be for next year. So you don't want to put a lot of that on tape, obviously. I don't know. I definitely think that you need to allow him to run. There are a lot of plays where we are running curl routes on like third down, and you just can't do it because we have, again, Donovan Peoples-Jones, who can make those contested catches, but can't separate and get himself away. Amari Cooper, they're obviously going to be looking for Cooper. You just have to get more creative. And in the red zone, we saw like a lot of stuff where you're doing direct snaps to Hunt or Chubb, and you're bringing in a pulling tackle and all that type of stuff. And then you don't see it the next week and you fall short in the red zone. And then that's a time where you need those creativity, that creativity. It's just consistency. And I think that this offensive staff knows what they're doing. And I obviously don't know what is going on in there, but from the looks of it, you need somebody else who is going to say, I can take over this play calling. I can, lead you and give you advice to call better plays and get everything that you can out of this offense. I just don't think it's happening right now. And it just needs to be fixed. And I don't think that is going to be fixed by bringing in a completely new head coach. You just need, maybe one more guy in there that can collectively work with everybody. And like a Bill O'Brien, I know he's probably not going to be taken away from Bama, but if you want to explore the option, do it. Bring him in as an offensive assistant, maybe a new offensive. I don't care, but find somebody that can collectively work with your staff and get the most out of everybody that you can.
I think that sounds like a good plan, man. If they were to go down that road, I think Deshaun Watson is best served, like Shannon said, play action because of the awesome line in the run game that they have with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, but also some bootleg action, some naked boot, some boot, get him outside the pocket, rolling out. I mean, he's pretty accurate on the move. Watson is, and I mean, you have to respect it with those running backs in that line. So yeah, it's a lot of things that some new ideas could benefit the Browns from. Could benefit from.
Yep, 100%. And those tight ends that we have, love our bunches and all that. That's extra blocking, and Donovan Peoples-Jones has grown as a blocker, so you can definitely run those play action plays and make him comfortable and give him as many options as he needs to be successful.
Okay, Shannon, you got anything else? I mean, because I have a question about the Steelers. I've been dying to ask. I want to ask Shannon, and we talked about this on the We Run the North podcast. Can I go ahead and ask it?
Yeah,
because we talked briefly. Like Noah made mention of some of the things the Browns need. Mm-hmm. So, what do you think, Shannon? Some of the pieces the Steelers need going into next year?
Well, we already talked about it a little bit there earlier, but
a corner, shutdown corner.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at it, and last year was an offensive focused offseason. You know, Kevin Colbert wanted to leave the Steelers in the best situation he could. Now, man wasn't perfect. He let the foundations of the offensive and defensive line deteriorate by not, utilizing top early round selections on it. You got to keep the foundation strong. And the Steelers have suffered because of that for the last 5 years. They went from having one of the best offensive lines in the NFL, and it just kept getting worse. So I'm really impressed with Pat Meyer, the new offensive line coach. I'm impressed with James Daniels and Mason Cole's additions. Okorafor is playing better than he's ever played, and it's incredible that he's still 24 years old. I mean, he's been in the league. This is year 5, and he's getting ready or just turned 25. Everybody's 26 or younger on the offensive side of the ball. So this year, it definitely needs to be a defensive-focused draft to get younger and stronger on that defensive line. They need a huge upgrade. Depth's great everywhere, but they need a huge upgrade at inside linebacker. I really like Chad Muma last year. There's been other guys, Collins the year before. The guys that are more modern, hybrid, they have Buck and Matt capabilities. And they don't have to come off the field. Those guys are hard to get. And usually have to spend a top 2 pick on one.
So that really segues into my actual question for you. Mm-hmm. Because I agree with you. We do need some defensive pieces. You mentioned earlier defensive line. Mm-hmm. You said something about a corner. Mm-hmm. And now you're talking about, inside linebacker. Yeah. And I agree. All those positions could benefit us. Our O-line could benefit us. But my question is, think about the Cincinnati Bengals model a couple years ago where they took Jamar Chase for Joe Burrow.
I know where you was going.
Yeah, if Jordan Addison was available, say at pick 18, we're somewhere around 16, 18 right now. Uh-huh. If he was available, do we take that one pick and try and get him to get Pickett comfortable, then have that, have those 3 wides with Deontay Johnson, Pickens, Addison, and hopefully Calvin Austin III will come back next year and be a factor.
Yeah, well, we can't count on Austin because we just don't know what he will be. But I mean, that speed is electric, and that if he has the physicality to play at the NFL level, those guys that are super fast, his frame, he might get up to in the 180s. Add about 10 pounds of muscle, and he might take the pounding because his speed will play. But we just, till you see him do it, we just don't know. One thing I'll say about that first round selection, and I figured you was going to ask about Addison, is because the Steelers have kind of done the Cincinnati Bengals. They've kind of copied their rebuild. The Bengals did it backwards. They got the skill position in the quarterback, and then they tried to strengthen the line this past offseason.
Mostly in free agency.
Yeah, and so the Steelers actually have some money to spend, or they will have. They have some draft capital, maybe some valuable draft capital. If somebody like Noah was saying the Browns want to move up to that early second-round pick that the Steelers are going to have, thanks to Chase Claypool trade, you might could get a couple additional picks. The more picks you have in the top 100, if you look at the teams that rebuild quickly, the more picks you have in the top 100, the quicker your rebuild is, the more successful. There's just something about that top 100 range.
Well, if you remember that draft, I think it was it 2020 draft or 2021? 2021. When they took Jamar Chase, everybody thought they needed an old lineman. They did. They went to take Penei Sewell from Oregon, who went to Detroit. Yep. But they went ahead and took Jamar Chase, and it worked out excellently. They went to the Super Bowl his rookie year. I'm just wondering, is that a model that we can duplicate? I know we would sacrifice the first round pick, taking the receiver, and then getting those other shop for those other groceries in the with the last pick of the first pick of the second round and our second round pick and the third round pick.
Well, that's what I was getting at. You didn't let me finish.
Okay.
That early pick, it could be 32, depending on what happens this weekend. That's highly coveted, and you can pick up hopefully 2 picks for the 1 in the early rounds. If you could get a generational talent in the first round, you have to consider it. Now, like if you've got a franchise quarterback, you're not going to, pick another quarterback or something of that nature. But even if the wide receiver I do not consider a high priority, if Addison was to be there, and we know the chemistry that he has with Pickett, and after we see the combine, we haven't seen any of that yet. After they do all that, if they consider him a generational talent, you would have to consider that in the first round. Again, you can base it off of the Bengals' success with Chase, and that set them up. That's going to be a great connection for years. And if Steelers think that they have that caliber of connection with Pickett and Addison, I don't. The reason I would be against it is because of the serious need. You don't want to pick by need. Everybody says best player available.
Yeah, best player
it's really
available.
Best player available at an area of need. I think because it has to correlate. Again, because the need has to be there. I'm not as fond of Deontay Johnson as a lot of people are because he has no run after the catch ability. He can get open. He's a good possession guy. And I think he has real value as a wide receiver too. Pickens needs to be wide receiver 1. He's the splash play guy. He's the big play guy. He's a contested catch guy. And he's ultra competitive, which is so important. Pat Freiermuth will be the security blanket. He'll be the guy that both of them guys are going to have a special connection with Pickett. So that leaves Deontay Johnson, who should be able to feast on these cornerback 2 and 3 matchups as a wide receiver 2. He was miscast. They tried to use him like a wide receiver 1, and Deontay Johnson is not a wide receiver 1. But he can be dominant as that wide receiver 2. So what you would actually do is, what are you going to do with Deontay Johnson if you take Addison?
Well, if you're asking me, we've already paid him for 2 years after this year, so he has 2 more seasons. You could maybe get some value for him in the trade. He signed for 2 years. I'm only asking about the question because of the Bengals model and what they did.
Yeah.
And the obvious connection that Burrow and Chase had at LSU, and the obvious connection that Addison and Pickett had at Pitt.
Yeah.
So just the question. See what your thoughts were. If you're asking me, I'd like to see an O lineman. I think a lot of the D line will be going by the time we pick. People thought we were gonna have a top 5 pick, and we got out of that. We're not gonna have a top 5 pick. But I wouldn't mind like Joey Porter Jr. I like Joey Porter Jr. from Penn State as a coverage corner. He's physical. He tackles well and stuff like that. And we know he has pedigree. We know the Steelers organization and Tomlin stuff. They like that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, there's the Steelers. They know he has that mindset. He understands the Steeler way. Any ties to the Steeler way and the Steeler culture, they like that. And that's why when they took Connor Hayward, I was all for it because Connor has that mentality. He knows the way, and he's that all-around glue guy that every team needs.
Just a
he's
football
the guy
player.
You go out there, you ask him to do anything, he's like, I got it.
Right.
And I told everybody that they're going to love him when he gets some big kick-out blocks, and you see that extra effort throwing a block or a special teams tackle. That's who he is.
Right.
And I think he could be even more valuable with more experience. But I've been very excited about that. And again, like you said, Joey Porter Jr. is, he looks like the real deal. So, again, I don't really start to do my evaluations like on our site or anything until after the combine.
Right.
Because, that combine, so many things, players that we're all expecting to be here.
It exposes a lot.
Yeah, they move so much when on that stage. And sometimes it's because they just don't respond well to that. That's the biggest job interview of your life. That is intense pressure. And some guys rise to the occasion, and some, they freeze up and they tighten up. So, you don't put everything based off the combine. You got to look at film, and you got to, do your background, your research, because some guys might have a bad combine and they're going on to have a great NFL career. So,
right. Okay. Well, yeah, we just touched on some draft talk about 3 months early, but we get ready to wrap up, man. Noah, let's get you, man. Go ahead and plug whatever you're doing, where we can find you. And like I said, I do a weekly. We run the North podcast about AFC North ball, man. I'll get your information, and maybe you can guest appear on our show.
For sure, yeah, I'd enjoy that. You can find me over on Twitter, Brown Central _, Instagram, Brown Central, and all podcast platforms, the Dawg Check podcast, and I'd appreciate the follows. Any support helps, but I really enjoyed my time here, and thank you guys for having me, for sure.
No, there's one thing we always do.
Yeah,
and I forgot to warn you, but at the beginning, which I should have. Can you give us a prediction? Are you comfortable giving us a prediction for the game?
Man, well, since weather has been a big factor, I haven't had a chance to look at the weather forecast. But I'll go like 28-18 Browns.
Okay. 28-18 Browns. What do you think, Kevin?
Oh, man. Well, I told you about some of my Cleveland Brown cousins. I bet one of them $50. And so obviously I got to think the Steelers are going to win. I think it's a tight game. I don't think either team wins by 10, even though the Browns won by 12 the first time. We know it's because of that fumble Ruski played at the end while they got another 6 points.
Yeah.
But I'd say Pittsburgh 23, Cleveland 17.
Well, you're pretty close to what my prediction was, my thought process. I just think that Kenny's going to have the magic this one more week. I think it's going to be a tough game. I don't think the weather. No, I don't think it's going to be a big factor. So I think it's going to just really come down to execution, and I think that Pickett is on a roll and he wants to close this thing out. I'm going to actually go, which I think I picked against them in the first game. I might have picked them one time with Watt out because I know they don't win without TJ Watt. But I think this game the Steelers can win 23-20. Late field goal.
Nice. Okay, well, Noah, again, thanks for joining us, man.
Definitely.
We appreciate it. Good luck. Good luck Sunday.
Thank you.
So, okay, we're going to wrap this up. So thank you guys, everybody, for watching the Know Your Enemy podcast. Be sure to check out all the BTSC all has to offer in way of podcasts on this YouTube platform, the audio platform, and the Behind the Steel Curtain website with a lot of great articles. And Shannon, you got anything to say?
No, just thanks for tuning in, and thank you, Noah, for coming on, and good luck anytime you're not playing the Steelers.
Hey, man. Hey, man, I always want to do this. I know you do this on The Hangover, but go ahead and take us home, Shannon White.
Oh, you want the woo?
Come on, man.
Woo!
Let's go Steelers.